Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidiri. The time is 8:48 Central African Time. And we're going to be switching gears now to a topic which I think starting to get onto everyone's psyche now, that things can't continue like this, especially when you look at the Cape Flats, where childhood looks entirely different. In areas like Hanover Park, children aren't just growing up around violence; they're growing up inside it. It is affecting them directly. And a story that really caught my attention is a story of a 6-year-old girl who's now currently fighting for her life. This after being caught in gang crossfire. In the latest reminder of just how exposed young lives are in these communities. And this is despite a military presence on the ground. I think it was sometime last week where we saw the army being deployed in some of the areas in the Western Cape, and police visibility apparently being increased. That's what the authorities are saying. But residents on the ground will tell you a really, really different story. The bullets haven't stopped. And they still cut through homes. People are ducking and diving, and the streets are not safe. And what's concerning is the fact that children themselves have been affected. And for many families, it looks like safety is not guaranteed. It doesn't matter what the government says or what the government of Western Cape or the municipality of Cape Town says. It is not guaranteed in any way. It's not guaranteed at schools, not guaranteed at home. It doesn't matter where you are. Violence seems to always find itself on your doorstep when you are in these areas. And in some cases, children can't even play outside and aren't safe inside either. So you ask the question, what needs to happen? What more can be done when the situation has gotten out of hand like it has right now? And we're joined by someone that is quite close to the story, and someone that can give us insight on just how widespread the issue of violence and gangsterism is in the Cape Flats area and in some of the areas that are affected, especially what you'd call quote unquote colored areas. And we're joined now by the Hanover Park Community Policing Forum member Yaseen Johaar, who's joining us via our virtual platform. Yaseen, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to News and Views. Really appreciate you giving us your time.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to yourself and to all the listeners tuned in here at Salam Media. Just a correction, yes, I did previously serve on the CPF. However, I did step down not too long ago, in order to focus on deeper issues around crime in the Hanover Park area.
And I think that's very, very important because the focus becomes so narrow. And I think that's the response that we're getting from government. The fact that they are focusing on the symptoms of the problem, which is gangsterism, which is violence, but not the core issue. From your point of view, what would you say are the key issues that are contributing to these large-scale violence instances that we're seeing coming from areas like Hanover Park and some of the surrounding areas?
I like what you said around, the core issues and the root causes of crime. And I think that goes back to the, the bread and butter issues within the struggling communities. We can put as much as boots on the ground as we want. The situation won't change. And I think the examples that you mentioned about the tragic incidences, and innocence, young innocence being, fighting for their life, that is the reality. And you can put on, sadly to say, the army is not going to do it for us. And you can put as much army, additional boots on the grounds, law enforcement, metro, SAPs. The bread and butter issues remain the same. Crime will remain the same. People are starving. People are hungry. Unemployment is rife. High schooling dropout rates within the struggling communities and within Hanover Park as well. So I think those issues, and as long as you're not going to address those issues, the crime situation in the communities will remain the same. And this isn't something that is a rocket science, it's something that is a reality. And if it is that you want to put an army of some sort within the struggling communities, then I would say put an army of social workers, put an army of people who's going to provide food. People are hungry and starving, and I mean that not to justify the actions of criminal behavior. But those are the reasons why they then tend to go in that line.
How would you respond to people who are not directly being affected by these instances of violence and gangsterism, people that are reading it on the news and just watching it on TV, and they're so distant, because this narrative has been popping out on social media and it's been annoying me. People that are saying, well, the people in these areas don't know what they want, they're shifting the goalposts. They were calling for the army and increased police visibility for a very, very long time. Now they're boots on the ground and they're saying, well, you should be doing something else as the government. This is not going to work. This is just putting a band-aid on a bullet wound. How would you respond to that?
You know, when you find yourself in a situation where you're imprisoned within your own homes, when you're imprisoned within your community, when your kids can't play in the park, when you're not sure when your kids leave for school, they're gonna come home. Um, any sort of mechanism that's going to alleviate it in any small way, you're going to agree, I mean, go with it because of desperation. So when
Mm,
government, or when ministers, or those in those positions call out to say, okay, we're going to launch a special unit, metro policing, or we're going to deploy the army, obviously people in desperate situations are going to take whatever comes their way. However, we're seeing that it's not the solution. You know, when we look more closer to home, or to the Western Cape, a part of the deployment of the army, you have the deployment of metro police, you have deployment of law enforcement. If you're just going to take, so I think in response to those that saying we don't know what we want, we know exactly what we want. And the community, I can assure you, is 150% coming to the front to want to eradicate, gang violence and crime. But the desperate situation that they in, and as long as you're going to have a community like Hanover Park and many others within the Cape Flats and South Africa that has high unemployment rates, high school dropouts, poverty is rife. You're gonna have, you're always going to have the situation where crime is going to be the order of the day. And again, if you want to invest, I mean, investing, I think, I'm not sure my numbers, I speak under correction, but 800 million into the army prior to within Western Cape, you had the shot spot and another couple of hundreds of millions. Put that into food. Put those millions into making sure children remain on school and prevent them from dropping out. You will have a better community. You will have people that grow out of crime and violence and actually become better citizens of South Africa. And then again, I want to also add that if you're going to take the same situation, take Hanover Park and all the situations around unemployment, school dropouts,
mm,
poverty, and you put that in any affluent community like Constantia or Bishop's Court, and the more affluent Sea Point, you will have those affluent communities become exactly like Hanover Park.
Very, very important to note. And I think people often downplay that because they're so detached and so far away from the situation. And you're quite correct. It is around 123 million rand that has been invested in the deployment of the SANDF into the Cape Flats and the surrounding areas. Just for people that might not know, the full scale of just how bad things are, can you paint a picture for us, especially how young children are being affected by this, the fact that children can't go outside and play, the fact that children can't even go to school sometimes because of how dangerous it has become, and also how these gangs are recruiting younger children. How serious is that threat?
So, firstly, in terms of schooling and students, the matriculants within Hanover Park, they will tend to write their final exams while gunshots is ringing outside the school. That is the situation. Um, on any given day, it's to have shooting happen every second day in 1 month is normal. The realities of a gunshot, I'm not sure if listeners know how loud it is. It actually wakes up your soul, and the trauma that comes with that in itself is very traumatic. So I think it's easy to cast your opinion, but the realities of living in that situation. So what you find in the masses in general within the community, you have a traumatized community, a community that just here car backfires and then they get a shock or they bend down because thinking it's a gunshot. And this trauma, it affects school, it affects work, it affects many issues within our daily lives. And so at the end of the day, what community and what the the normal law abiding citizens within Hanover Park, the reality is as if you're just struggling to survive. It's as if you're in this jungle and you're just trying to keep yourself and your family safe, and not knowing even our people that is going to work, they leaving and taking public transport in an unsafe environment, not even sure if they're going to get to work or get back. So
mm,
it's a really a bad situation that we currently find ourselves in. And I think desperation, I think for me, to see how the crime situation is politicized and how we can see now in recent times of situations, people, and I don't want to call anyone out, but I mean, um, at the end of the day, it's young people losing their lives. It's innocent
mm,
people being affected. To go live to do raids and patrols, or or to show that you're doing this and you're finding missing persons, or you're showing that U.S. Marines is on the beach. It's I think it's really sad to see how the politics has crept in order to just garnish voting powers on the lives of our innocent people within our communities. Even though, and I want to add this, yes, we don't justify the actions of gangsters and those falling in the vices of gangsterism and drugs. But if you're having someone, a majority of criminals within the community are orphans, and so when you look at the situation, a child's an orphan, drops out of school, um, struggling to find a piece of bread to eat. And so when a gang member comes with some food or with some new shoes that they've never seen new shoes in their life, and then
mm,
when they get recruited and then we're saying that our children have choices and they want to become gangsters. No, they don't want to become gangsters. The situation is that there was never an opportunity for them. Safety in general is a basic human right. And so what we can say is that our human rights, our basic human rights, has been violated. By those politicizing and by those that we was given the responsibility to actually put the money and the funds and in the right place in order to garnish the support that is needed. But then again, I would also just want to, and I'll finish with this, to say that if you take those 800 million and 100 and something million and put it in food, just in, for example, in Hanover Park,
mm,
overnight you will see the crime situation in the community changes.
mm, very, very important to note. Just lastly, before I let you go, how important is it for not only the authorities but the whole of South Africa as a country to not be desensitized to the violence that's happening in the Western Cape, the Cape Flats, and Khayelitsha and all of the surrounding areas? Because I think we're falling into a trap where a lot of people just see it as an area where it's colored people killing colored people or black people killing black people, and it should just remain as that. It should be confined as that because it's been happening for a very, very long time. How dangerous is that scenario where we are becoming desensitized? It is seen as the normal of the day, a part of the country that is like that, has always been like that, and will always be like that.
A very vital point that you're raising here. I always say, um, at the end of the day, you're having a people entrapped within their own communities, and and the best way in order to show solidarity with that, forget what is painted in the media. With all due
Mm,
respect, of what you're reading in the newspaper of red zones and stay away. Take the time and go through, spend time within those, so to say, red zones, and you will see,
mm,
you will actually find the better people to speak to communicate to. I would say we as a country should then engage more with those community people and understand them, and create that barrier to see that. that there is actually more things that we can agree on and more things in common than anything else. And you will see that there's actually people within the communities doing phenomenal work. We ourselves with the community foundation, we looking past this temporary initiatives and focusing on root causes of crime and on the root young men and investing in them for the next 2 years so that they can make better choices. And I think those initiatives, and others are the ones that is actually keeping boys and youth in general still grounded. And if only those initiatives could be funded with the millions being sent
Mm,
to the army and additional boots on the ground, what a great and what amazing world it would be, to then, it's not rocket science. It's easy to address the crime situation. I think it's maybe by time that we don't keep communities responsible, but we're keeping those who took the responsibility of keeping us as a nation safe, and they're failing to do so.
there we go. I think we're going to leave it on that very, very powerful note. Yaseen Johaar, activist and community member of Hanover Park. Really, really appreciate you giving us your time, and I hope we chat again soon. There
Afwan,
we
walaikum
go.
salam, and shukran for the opportunity.
There we go. And I think, yeah, very, very important to note. I think the points that he's making are very, very important. The fact that we become so engrossed into the media, what we're seeing, when these are becoming red zones that we shouldn't be visiting, red zones that we shouldn't even be talking about. The status quo should be left as it is. And I think that's a very, very dangerous territory when you start being desensitized to the reality. I think for me, appreciated is the SANDF being deployed. I think the government buckled to the pressure because, as you heard from Yaseen, people have become desperate. They wanted some kind of intervention from the government. And at the moment, it looked like the SANDF was the answer. And it looks like it's not, because it's more systematic. You're treating a symptom and not the cause of the issue. The cause of the issue is simple. It's youth unemployment. The cause of the issue is young people dropping out of school. The core, the issue is the fact that you have people that are not given attention by the government of the day. They're othered and have always been othered since the dawn of democracy. And I think that's what's more important: community initiatives that are long-standing and that could have meaningful impact to the young men and women, children of Hanover Park, of the K Flats, of Khayelitsha, and all of these other areas, which we are starting to normalize violence because every week there's a headline of what happened in that part of the country. And I think for me, what's stopping the government of the day, this GNU, from saying, well, we are escalating this. There should be a national state of emergency when it comes to gangsterism and the high levels of crime. We saw they did it with gender-based violence. I'm not sure how much of that has yielded any kind of positive results, but you need it also with gangsterism because young people are perishing, young people are dying in these communities, and we are increasingly becoming desensitized to it. I want to talk to you. What do you think should be the solution? What do you think the government of the day needs to do to mitigate the scourge, this pandemic, as we like to call things here in South Africa, of violence and gangsterism affecting young people? You can engage with us. Our serial line is 011 on WhatsApp, 061 What solutions can you propose to the government of the day? Or what do you think us, normal ordinary South Africans, can do about it? Because I think you can only call on to government so much until you realize that there's no answer, there's no solution here. Maybe we should be taking it upon ourselves to do something about it. Same way that those that fought for freedom did it. They went out to the streets, they protested until the apartheid government buckled and it collapsed. They didn't call on anyone. They took the onus unto themselves. And maybe we should be doing that. We should be not taking the law into ourselves, but taking the initiative, whether it's the initiative of calling government into account as much as we can, whether it's punishing them at the polls, where we go out and vote and say, well, the priority, top of the list, should be, are you or are you not able to mitigate the scourge of violence in our communities, gangsterism, country as big and as sophisticated as South Africa, the threat of gangsterism should be mitigated a long time ago. You have countries in South America that have done it overnight. The willingness is there. And I think it's time to have those difficult conversations with the various thousands of political parties that are there. Top of the list, violence in our communities. Are you or are you not? Everything, legislature, BEE, da da da, we'll see that, because all of these policies are no good to anyone if young people are dying on the streets each and every day. What's good a free education policy when all of those young people don't even reach matric? It's difficult conversations, and it's difficult conversations that we need to have, because they speak of a deeper crisis where the most vulnerable people in our community are the ones carrying the heaviest burden, and they shouldn't. Young children shouldn't be dying because of gangs in the streets. There shouldn't even be gangs in our streets to begin with. National state of emergency. That's my solution. What's yours? Engage with us on our various social media platforms. We're going to take a quick break. News and views will continue after this.
Rejuve